So what do you think, Brad?
Well, I think for me, what's going to be super important with iArcade, for me, what's going to be super important is this here, Space Invaders. They got to get Space Invaders right. And it's a AAA title. It has a lot of nostalgia. I want to talk about backdrop emulation and how important it is on these classic arcade games. Here's what I got to show.
Here's an example of Space Invaders backdrop emulation. This is going to be important to have the correct look for actual arcade Space Invaders. Here's another example of a simple Space Invaders backdrop emulation. Don't leave this out if you're going to do Space Invaders.
And this is how it works in an arcade game.
Okay, Papa Brad's going to show you how one of the classic games works. And this is a trick that they should be using also on the Space Invaders when it comes out for iArcade. You notice I'm at the Real Asteroids Deluxe machine. The way it works is there is art and watch when I pan down what happens. The actual monitor is shooting up onto some artwork. So what the player sees, they don't see this with no graphics. They actually see an asteroid field. This gives the authentic experience. You're gonna do a game like Space Invaders or Asteroids Deluxe, the background is a big part of how this game works.
Okay, now what I gotta say is, let's get that backdrop emulation in there. What brought me to iArcade was when they released Dragon's Lair. I saw them on P-Dubs. I believed in Jong. They came out with the console. Dragon's Lair is an amazing version of the game, and they gotta give Space Invaders that AAA treatment like they did to Dragon's Lair. Give the game the respect it deserves. What do you guys think?
Dude, I completely agree. I think in a broader sense, I think what you're basically trying to say, it feels like to me, is just they need to do it right.
Do it right.
So when they've got an idea, something that they want to implement, do it 100% right. Don't kind of skimp on it.
Exactly. Let me blast one thing in. Yeah. iArcade. Mame has had this for a while. Yours should at least be this good. You gotta do backdrop emulation if you're gonna do Space Invaders.
Yeah.
Period.
It's kind of like if you're gonna put out Space Invaders without backdrops and that kind of thing, it's like you don't want to do things halfway. Do it right or don't do it at all.
Either do it right or don't do it at all. And they've done such a great job. When I play a game like Burger Time or Elevator Action or Dragon's Lair, man, I feel like I'm at the arcade. And I gotta say that's a fantastic thing.
I don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that they're not doing things fully. Like some of the things, they're blowing us away. Like we ask for scan lines and they give us like 10 different options, right? So I'm not saying that they're not doing it that way, but they have to keep that momentum up. Don't start skimping on stuff and doing things halfway, right? Like that's pretty important, I think.
Quality. If you're going to bring it to the iArcade, keep the quality and optimize those games. I would rather wait and have a perfectly optimized game than get a game that's rushed out. How do you guys feel?
I agree.
They've proven that they're doing a good job with what they're putting out. In general, they're doing a really good job. Space Invaders was the first video game I ever played. because the
Before I
chats
was
were over.
born, probably.
Yeah, and it was in a Kmart at the customer service area.
What?
And back in the 70s, your parents,
Explain this.
they didn't
Yeah,
really watch you. She parked me at that Space Invaders with, a bunch of quarters, and she took care of business, and I was in another world. But the first arcade game that Papa
Wow,
Brad
what
ever
a
played
story.
was a Space Invaders in the 70s. So, I mean, to me, the game has a lot of nostalgia and importance. And that's the big deal to me. It's the first video game I ever played. So,
Isn't that
want to
funny?
talk about? Do you guys want to talk about Space Invaders story real quick? We have time.
You got a Space Invader story? Sure. Let's hear your Space
Sure
Invader
do.
story.
So Papa Brad obviously is talking about playing Space Invaders in Kmart. Here in Orange County, my bro, right? He's like my best friend for like the last 30 years. When we were kids, we used to go to an arcade next to Golden West College. It was called Hora's Arcade. Now the cool thing is Tadai Ford's actually been to that arcade. I was talking with Tadai Ford, and we were also talking about Beach and Wonder. So Tadai Ford, looking forward to playing some Street Fighter, bro. So this arcade in Huntington Beach that we went to was right across the street from the college. It was called Hora's Arcade. And the cool thing about this arcade was it was owned by Mr. Hora. Okay. And we used to go in there and we'd play Street Fighter and we'd play all these games in this arcade because they had an awesome Neo Geo collection, an awesome Street Fighter. They had like 3 Street Fighter cabinets in there. But they also had Space Invaders, and here's the story. So we used to go into this arcade all the time as kids, and there was this Japanese girl who worked in the arcade, and she was like 6 years older than us. And we were, over here we are, we're like 14, 15. She's like this 20-year-old and she's beautiful, right? This beautiful Japanese girl. And so we used to go. You guys remember slush puppies? You guys remember those?
Oh yeah.
oh yeah.
So
Oh,
we'd
yeah.
go up to the counter and we'd order like a slush puppy just to say hi to her, right? You guys ever do this before, right? Like,
Just to say hi to a cute girl.
right. And then we drink the slush puppies real fast and we get like brain freezes, right? And then we go back and order another slush puppy, right? We just do this all day long, right? Well, here's the cool story about Mr. Hora. This was his daughter. She was about 20. It's funny. She tells us now, she's like, I couldn't stand working at the arcade. So fast forward to about 3 years ago, my best friend, see, she lives right down the street from my best friend. So he goes over and to her house and, they start talking. And long story short, they become an item, right?
Uh-huh.
Here's the coolest part of this whole story. When Space Invaders came out, they reached out to Mr. Hora and said, hey, we have this thing called Space Invaders in Japan. It's causing quarter shortages. Will you bring Space Invaders to the United States? And Mr. Hora said, absolutely. And so the arcade that I grew up next to was the birthplace of Space Invaders. So there's my story on Space Invaders.
No
That's
way.
a pretty cool
Cool
story.
stuff.